This is the Chris Berry Show. Expert information on elder law, retirement, and estate planning. Information that you can understand. Here's your host, Chris Berry.
Welcome to the Chris Berry Show. This is Chris Berry, where we talk legal, wealth, and tax planning for the second half of life. Very excited this week to have Maggie Gibbons from the Alzheimer's Association join us, and she'll be joining us in the second segment as we learn more about Alzheimer's, as June is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. So I'm very excited to have Maggie joining us. She's going to help us understand what Alzheimer's is, the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia, and she's also going to explain some of the exciting things, important work that the Alzheimer's Association is doing to help fight Alzheimer's, which is something that's affected my family, affects my clients, and something we should be concerned about. So join us in the second segment when Maggie from the Alzheimer's Association will be sharing her knowledge with us. And so every week I like to start with what I call a positive focus, something exciting that happened in this past week. And with this being June and school starting to wind down, we had two exciting things happening with my children, Ryan and Madison. My son Ryan, he's 7, about to turn 8 actually. His birthday's coming up in August. But one of the cool things that happened is he's wrapping up second grade. And as part of that, he's in what's called a highly capable cluster, where they grab some kids and every other Friday they pull them out of class to work on some type of topic, such as forensics, engineering, chemicals, weather. So every other Friday they work on a project together. And at the end of the school year, so this past week, the children put together a presentation for all the parents and the grandparents, and I was able to attend. And it was pretty exciting to see my son work on a PowerPoint. So each kid would put together a PowerPoint slide describing what one of their favorite aspects of the highly capable cluster was. So it's pretty exciting given all the presentations that I do. In fact, this week on one day I had 7 different presentations. But it was pretty exciting to see my son up there presenting for the first time. And there's probably about 60 people up there. And it wasn't a long presentation. You kind of read the slides, which is a no-no when you're presenting. But I think it's pretty good for the first time for a 7-year-old. So it was pretty exciting to see little Ryan following his dad's footsteps of being a presenter, and also following his grandfather's footsteps. My dad, he's been a professor at Oakland Community College. He was there for, I think, about 47 years. So a lot of education in the Berry family. So that was pretty exciting. And then also my daughter, this is her last year. We have her in Montessori school. And so this was our last year. They have an end of year celebration each year where you bring food and it turns into a picnic, and some of the kids graduate. And so this is going to be her last year in Montessori. So it was a pretty exciting day as well. So, and also one of the things I already mentioned is we had one day this week where I had 3 different presentations all in one day, all on different topics. And it's exciting for me. Those are days that I love because I love providing education. That's one of the reasons we started the Chris Berry Show. That's one of the reasons I wrote the Caregiver's Legal Guide, Caring for a Loved One with Chronic Illness. And that's why we do so many workshops that are free to the public. And you can learn more about our workshops by going to our website, so if you go to thechrisberryshow.com, you'll see a list of our upcoming workshops as well as links to our planning pages, as well as a link to the Alzheimer's Association, where you can help us raise funds for Alzheimer's. But every week we typically do have at least one workshop, but it just turned out that we had 3 workshops all in one day, which made for quite a day. But it's exciting for me. I love sharing the knowledge. And so the 3 workshops, we first thing in the day, and this was in Livonia, we had workshop on Social Security timing. So started off the day in Livonia talking about Social Security optimization. When is the right time to take Social Security? And you'd be surprised at the answers. And it really does depend on your situation. But a basic guideline is the longer you think you're going to live, the longer you want to wait to take Social Security, typically. Because what happens is once you reach full retirement age, basically you get an 8% increase every year until age 70. So at age 70, the amount of money you'd be getting monthly from Social Security is about 132% of what it would be at full retirement age, which is typically 66 or 67, depending on your age. But Social Security can be confusing. There's a lot of different strategies involved. And so the first workshop we had that day, Thursday in Livonia, was one on Social Security timing. Then the second workshop that we had was, and this was at 2 o'clock at Livonia, at our Livonia office, right off of 6th and Haggerty. Our second workshop of the day was planning for the second half of life in 3 easy steps, where we talk legal and financial and tax planning for the second half of life. And we talk about a lot of things that we talk about here on the Chris Berry Show. So we talked about avoiding probate. We talked about long-term care. We talk about not paying taxes unnecessarily. Talked about how to plan if you're a veteran to receive your veterans benefits. A lot of information. We do that workshop about once a week. And if you do want information on attending one of our workshops, you can visit us online at thechrisberryshow.com, or you can give us a call at any time, 810-355-2584, where you can register yourself for one of our upcoming workshops, or you can even ask a question. And so if you do have questions that you want us to answer on the show, you can leave us a voicemail at 810-355-2584. And you can also shoot us an email at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com. And so in our third segment today, we're going to be answering some of those readers or listeners' questions that were submitted this past week. And I have some good ones for you. And so then I was talking about the workshops. So our second workshop was our legal and financial planning for the second half of life in 3 easy steps. And typically we do that workshop about once a week at one of our different locations. And then the third workshop that I did that day was planning for a tax-free retirement. So we talked about some interesting strategies that you can utilize when you're planning for retirement, specifically with regards to taxes. So I find that taxes are, while we can't control the tax rate, what we can control is tax planning. And it's kind of interesting seeing how all of these different pieces fit together, from the beginning of the day when we're talking about Social Security to the end of the day when we're talking about taxes and retirement. Because a lot of people don't understand how, say, Social Security may or may not be taxed, depending on the amount of income you have coming in. And by structuring your assets in such a way that at age 70, when you have to start taking Social Security, when you have to start taking your required minimum distributions, if you can keep those to a minimum amount, then potentially your Social Security you receive could be tax-free. And so that's one of the strategies that we talk about in our tax-free retirement workshop. And so that was the end of the day. And 3 workshops in one day, I don't recommend it all the time, but it was an enjoyable day. I met a lot of great people, and we shared a lot of great information. So it was a busy day. And then now what I'm looking forward to is our next segment, where Maggie's going to be coming in, and we're going to start talking about Alzheimer's, because June is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And so it's an important to get awareness out there about this disease, and it's one of the few diseases that there's currently no cure for. And that's something, one of the big reasons why we're trying to raise money to help fight Alzheimer's. And so Maggie's going to talk about the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is one of the biggest events. And there's, I think, about 600 walks going on across the nation. And typically those are going to be at the end of the year. The walk that we support, the one in Livingston County, is going to be September 29th in the morning. It's a great event. Last year, I think there was about 600 to 800 people. We raised over $137,000 as a walk to help fight Alzheimer's. And as a team alone, we raised almost $11,000. And if that's something that you're interested in helping to join us for that walk, you can visit us online and sign up for the walk, or you can even donate money by going to thechrisberryshow.com, where you can learn more about the walk. And also this upcoming week, in our efforts to help raise money to fight Alzheimer's, we've partnered with Chipotle, the one in Brighton on Grand River Road, where June 12th, between 4 and 8 o'clock, 50% of the proceeds or 50% of the sales will go to the Alzheimer's Association. So it's one of those events that we love supporting, and it's one of the things that we're doing to try to help raise awareness and raise money for the Alzheimer's Association. We've been passing out a bunch of flyers whenever clients are coming to our office or whenever we're meeting clients, and we've been passing them around town. In fact, have some of my people who are helping to raise awareness. They've been passing it out just kind of in their daily life, and it's struck up some interesting conversations where it's surprising just how many people are affected by Alzheimer's. And so again, if you want to learn more about the Alzheimer's Association, stick with us in this next segment. And also you can donate online. You can go directly to alzeldercare.com, or you can just go to our website, thechrisberryshow.com, where there'll be a link where you can help raise money and even join us for the walk that's going to be September 29th in Brighton. And there's also a Metro Detroit walk as well as Ann Arbor and really all over the state. I think there's maybe 13 walks just in the state of Michigan. But it's an important event and a disease that's affected a lot of my clients as well as my family. So we love supporting that great cause. And one of the things, so next segment, we're going to have Maggie from the Alzheimer's Association come in. And then next week, what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time in our second segment next week talking about some legal and financial strategies to plan for a loved one who may have Alzheimer's or dementia. So there's certain tools that should be in place when you have a loved one diagnosed with dementia. For example, things like powers of attorney and how you have to have a well-drafted power of attorney. And then just the understanding that based on that diagnosis, chances are greater that we're going to have some long-term care costs that we need to plan for. So next week, we're going to talk about some of the strategies, both legal and financial, of how we can help plan for a loved one who has dementia, has Alzheimer's, or any type of chronic disease. And then in our third segment today, I'm going to answer some of our questions that our listeners have submitted to us. And it's always interesting seeing the questions that come over. And again, I love answering the questions. Some of them are detailed and some of them are simple. So feel free to send over those questions. You can do that via email anytime by sending an email to askchris@thechrisberryshow.com. Again, ask Chris at thechrisberryshow.com. And so we're going to answer those questions in our third segment today. And you're listening to The Chris Berry Show on FM 101.5, AM 1400, The Patriot. You can also download us where all podcasts are located, so you can find us on iTunes. And if you do have questions that you want us to read, give us a call anytime at 810-355-2584. So I was talking about the workshops that we did last week, and we have some upcoming workshops as well. So if any of those topics interested you, we're going to be in Livonia again next week presenting. Hopefully, we don't have it scheduled 3 in one day, but I think we do have one day where there's 2 in one day. 2 workshops. But if you are in the Livonia area and you want to attend one of our free workshops, we're going to be doing one on Social Security optimization. We're going to do one on planning for the second half of life, 3 easy steps to plan and protect your family. And then our third presentation we're doing in Livonia next week is going to be on a tax-free retirement. And if you want any information on those, feel free to give us a call or visit us online. You do have to register, though, so sometimes seating is limited. I think one of our workshops might be almost at capacity. We can only fit about 20 people there. So please join us if any of those topics are interesting to you. And then also stick around as next segment, we're going to have Maggie Gibbons in the studio talking about her role with the Alzheimer's Association. And again, next week, June 12th, if you're in the Brighton area, join us for dinner at Chipotle, where 50% of all the proceeds are going to go to help support the Alzheimer's Association. And you can get information on that at thechrisberryshow.com. So, and I'm very excited for Maggie to be joining us just in a few minutes. She's going to be joining us directly after the break. I've known Maggie for a couple years now, and she's really a driving force in terms of the growth of the Walk to End Alzheimer's, at least in our county, in Livingston County. I think she's been at it for a couple of years now, and she's really helped the walk grow. I think it's amazing just how much. I think we've probably doubled the amount of money that we've raised, and a lot of that is due to Maggie's efforts. So I know you're going to enjoy our conversation as she's coming in after the break, and I hope you stick with us. And then in our third segment, we're going to be answering some of your questions on the air. So with that, this has been Chris Berry from the Chris Berry Show, where we talk legal, financial, and tax planning for the second half of life on FM 101.5, AM 1400, The Patriot, as well as iTunes, where all the podcasts are located. And if you do have any questions, feel free to call us at 810-355-2584 and join me and Maggie after the break as we talk about the Alzheimer's Association.
If you or a loved one is facing long-term care costs, make sure you talk with certified elder law attorney Chris Berry from the Elder Care Firm. Here's Elder Care Firm client Bill Dappridge.
My wife has dementia. We decided that we had to put her in the nursing home. Well, naturally, we had to get lawyers, and we went through 3 before we met Mr. Berry. He's done everything for us. I guess one of those things that kind of sticks in your mind, he says, "I'm your new best friend," which is true. He's really helped a lot. One of my biggest concerns was not to have to sell the house up north, because actually I wouldn't get a penny out of it. It would all went to the state or the nursing home. And Chris says, "Don't worry about it. We'll take care of that." Would I recommend him? Definitely. Especially the people there in Brighton, and they've been great.
Hello, I'm attorney Chris Berry. The Elder Care Firm is here to help you and your family find solutions. Call us today.
Protect your assets from probate, long-term care costs, the IRS, and get the governmental benefits you deserve. Visit theeldercarefirm.com today or call 810-214-3800.
And welcome back to the Chris Berry Show. This is Chris Berry, where we talk legal, financial, and tax planning for the second half of life. And I have a very special guest with us today, and it's Maggie Gibbons from the Alzheimer's Association. I've known Maggie for a number of years now, and Alzheimer's, it's something that has affected my family and my clients, and it's something that's very important. So welcome, Maggie. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Wonderful. So what I'd love to hear is just maybe an introduction of how you got involved in the Alzheimer's Association, and then what the Alzheimer's Association is all about.
So I have a background in event planning and also an event planning background with seniors. So I've always worked with the aging population. So I found myself with the Alzheimer's Association about 3.5 years ago. So I'm very grateful to be there. We also have personal connections in our family. So it's an important cause to me as well. And the Alzheimer's Association, we're really very simple. We want to see a world without Alzheimer's. That's our vision. It's very simple.
Great. Wonderful. And so one of the things that we're always involved in every year is the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So you and I both know what the walk is all about, but maybe tell our listeners, what is the walk for? Where does the money go?
Absolutely. So the Walk to End Alzheimer's is our first signature event. It's the world's largest event to raise awareness and funds for Alzheimer's. And we're really raising support and funds for care, support, and research. So there's over 600 walks across the nation, which is really great to all be coming together. And we're uniting for an unstoppable force. As a nation, we raised over $89 million last year. And those funds are going right to the fight against Alzheimer's, both in dollars for research as well as care and support for the families that are currently being affected.
Yeah, it's very powerful. I know last year on our walk, I think we raised over $100,000. Was it
$137,000.
Yeah,
which incredible.
Which is wonderful. And one of the things, if you visit our website, if you go to thechrisberryshow.com, we're going to have a link that takes you to the Walk to End Alzheimer's, where you can actually make some donations. So again, if you go to thechrisberryshow.com, there'll be a link to the Alzheimer's Association where you can make donations to the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So, and that brings up a good point. A lot of people are confused of what Alzheimer's actually is. Can you help define that, or maybe differentiate the difference between that and dementia?
Yeah, so I always think of it as like an umbrella. Dementia is the umbrella term. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia that falls under that umbrella. And there's many different types of dementia, but Alzheimer's is the most common. So that's where we find our name and the most common heard, but we absolutely support all kinds of dementia. So again, it's a type of dementia, the most common type. But Alzheimer's is really the change, or dementia, I should say, is the change in cognitive function from your daily life. So it's something that you used to be able to do that you can no longer do. My husband will laugh when he hears this, but he knows I lose my keys on a daily basis, like 3 times a day. I've always done that. I always will. That doesn't mean I have dementia. Oftentimes you and I will walk into a room and we're distracted and we go, gosh, what were we in here for? We're able to trace our steps back and eventually get to that realization of what we were there. When we have some form of dementia, we're not able to retrace those steps back. So it's really that change in cognitive function from what you once were able to do that you're no longer able to do.
Yeah. And I remember we were at a community event, and not to put you on the spot, but you remember telling that story of the wife walking into her husband?
Yeah.
I think that's a great example of just how heart-wrenching and devastating it can be.
Yeah. One of the families that we work with, a woman spoke about walking into the bedroom, and her husband was standing with this look on his face, and he was holding a belt. And she said to him, Joe, what's going on? And he said, I don't know what to do with this. And that was really, we get up every day and put our belts on, and it's one of those routine things that we do. But he simply did not know what to do with it any longer. Yeah.
It's in the work that we do, we have a lot of clients walking through kind of similar shoes, and it has different effects, it seems like, on different people, where there's personality changes, and some people get very frustrated, it seems like.
Absolutely. There's a lot of pride associated with this, right? We're proud people that we once were able to do this and we're no longer able to do that. And what we find is a lot of people turn into themselves or become isolated because, Mr. Smith used to always go to the Knights of Columbus and, play bridge with his friends or play poker with his friends, and he doesn't remember the rules anymore, so he doesn't go. Or, grandma used to always love to go to church every Sunday, but it's too much for her because she can't remember her friends' names and she doesn't know how to get there, and there's just too much. So people often turn into themselves, and we find a lot of isolation, and that's part of that pride thing that we don't want to admit that something's wrong. So that's something that the Alzheimer's Association is out there doing, not only providing education out in the community to say that this is not a normal part of aging. You don't just get a touch of dementia. This is something that is really important for us to talk about, that this is a disease, and there's definitely things that come with that are not normal parts of aging.
Sure. And so speaking of kind of the Alzheimer's and coming on, how do people get diagnosed with Alzheimer's, or is it important to get diagnosed earlier rather than later?
That's a great question. So at this point, what I really like to say is that there is nothing right now that can stop, cure or prevent Alzheimer's. There's lots of things that we're trying to do to keep healthier bodies. That's our best line of defense at this point, is kind of a healthier body equals a healthy brain. But as far as diagnosis, there are some tests. There's not a blood test yet. There's not a saliva test yet. We're hoping for one day when we have those biomarker tests. But at this point, there are some scans and some different tests that your doctor can do having to do with memory. So the number one thing, the first thing that you should do is if you're starting to see some changes in changes in your behavior or a loved one's behavior, it's important to get in to see your primary care doctor because there are some things that can mirror dementia or show up as dementia that aren't necessarily Alzheimer's. So there are some things, simple things like a urinary tract infection. An older adult can have symptoms of dementia. And it's really important for us to get that early diagnosis and that early detection so that we can get an accurate diagnosis, as I was talking about, but also planning for the future. And you know this better than anyone, that it's allowing those individuals that are living with this disease to have the dignity and also to be involved in their care planning. We're also really excited to talk about the chance that they would have to change the path for the future by getting involved in clinical trials. That's a great way for folks to really feel empowered when they have this disease. When they feel like they're losing things, they actually could be gaining things by gaining in that fight.
Sure. And so once someone does have this diagnosis or think they're going down that path, what are some conversation, or how do you have conversations with family about that and their loved ones?
So it can be really complicated, but having a conversation doesn't have to be complicated. Close family members are typically the first to notice these issues, but they're often really hesitant to say something, right? Even when they know something's wrong. They're often in denial, or they just, are really worried about how so-and-so is going to approach their concern. So having the conversation as early as possible, again, before they cross the line, before we're into crisis mode, it's important to have that conversation. But then think about who's best suited to have that initiative conversation. If I'm talking with my parents, I'm probably better to have it with my mom than my brother is. Mm-hmm. That's just kind of how that works.
Sure.
So, and then practice conversation starters. Things like, I've noticed a few changes in behavior, and I want to see if you've noticed these things as well. And then resources like us as the Alzheimer's Association, we have these support services and education programs so people can become more involved. They need to know the 10 signs or the basics of Alzheimer's. We have things like care consultations where once you do get a diagnosis, you can come in and sit with one of our program coordinators who can talk to you about the changes that will come and conversation pieces and how to communicate, different things like that.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the signs of Alzheimer's. Can you list maybe some of those signs for us?
Yeah, so a couple of them are things like a change in behavior. Someone who was the life of the party is suddenly very sullen and wants to stay at home. Another big sign for us is things like a change in the way that we're handling our finances. Someone who, my grandfather, was always in his checkbook balancing day to day, and suddenly we're getting notices that his his checking account is overdrawn. Mm-hmm. That's a big change. One of the ones that I really enjoyed was a son said his mother was always a reader, an avid reader. So he started seeing more and more books show up at the door, and he kind of was like, well, that's a lot of books, but mom must really want to be reading, until he opened the box and saw that those books were mechanical engineering guides that she obviously would never have been reading. So some of those changes in behavior or choices are
Sure.
some of the signs.
Yeah. And so if someone is showing signs of Alzheimer's or maybe diagnosed with Alzheimer's, when should they be reaching out to the Alzheimer's Association, or what support is available?
So one of the first things that we always say is to go right to your primary care doctor, because we really want to negate any possible other inflictions that are happening. So we want to make sure that we're kind of crossing off the baseline and making sure that everybody's healthy first. But if you need a referral for someone for a local doctor or some other resources, those are things. We have an 800 number that we use. It's 24 hours, 7 days a week. So if you have any questions, that's a great place to start too.
Do you have that 800 number handy?
I sure do. 800-288-8255. 800-272-3900. Again, 24 hours, 7 days a week. And then also we have a website with lots of information that you can just start digging through if you're not comfortable making a call yet.
Sure. And what's that website?
alz.org.
Okay, wonderful. And again, we'll link to that on the chrisberryshow.com website, all of those resources. So now let's talk more about the Walk to End Alzheimer's. Is that kind of the number one way to raise money to help support the Alzheimer's Association?
We have lots and lots of different ways. As I said, that's our biggest event. That's how most people find us, is through the Walk to End Alzheimer's. We also have our other signature event called The Longest Day, and many other things. We just had a female flag football game out in East Lansing this past weekend. So lots of different ways.
U of M MSU, right?
It is.
Who
U of
won?
M MSU. I think U of M won this year.
All right.
I think.
All right.
I actually don't know. Now that I think about it. I wasn't there. I was at another event. But
okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so now, typically the walks occur during which month? Because I know you said there's, 600 across the whole nation?
Yes. Typically they're in September area. The
Sure.
fall area is usually when we do them. Some of our West Shore walks do them a little bit earlier because the weather's nicer out there. Our walk in Brighton will be September 29th this year.
Okay, yeah. And so that's going to be the walk that we're participating on. It's for Livingston County, or really anyone, and it's going to be September 29th. And you can get more information, or you can help support or even participate in the walk by visiting our website. You can go to thechrisberryshow.com, where we'll have links to the Alzheimer's Association, as well as links to donate money and also participate in the walk. Now, with the money that's raised from the walks and the other events, what is that money going to?
It is providing care and support right here in Livingston County and along the state. We're in all 50 states. So that 24 hours, 7 days a week access. And then we're also able to put some money towards research to find a way to stop this thing or slow it down. Currently, there is no way for us to cure Alzheimer's. So that's ultimately what we're looking for, is the money for the research to find out what is causing this thing and how we can slow it down.
Sure. Yeah. So speaking of finding a cure in the walk, can you tell us about the flowers? We see a lot of the flowers around at the walks, and I know they represent different colors, and we're aware, but maybe you could share
Absolutely.
the purpose of those different colored flowers.
At our walks, we really like to represent our connection to this disease. So we have 4 promise garden flowers. It's kind of our promise for the future. We have an orange that says that you don't know someone, but you share the vision of the world without Alzheimer's. And we have a yellow, which is a caregiver, a person that is caring for a loved one currently. We have a purple, which means that you've lost someone to Alzheimer's or another dementia. And then my favorite is we have a blue, and that is a person that is currently living with this disease, standing up and fighting with their peers and walking in honor of themselves as well as their friends around them. So it's pretty powerful to see, in Brighton, 1,000 walkers with all of these wonderful colored flowers. And we know that one day we hope to have the first survivor of Alzheimer's, and we represent that with one white flower at every walk every year.
Yeah, I know. At one of the committee meetings, you showed the video with a girl holding up the white flower, and everyone in the room was got a little dusty-eyed there.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Well, thank you again. And so if someone has questions, how can they get in touch with you or the Alzheimer's Association? One more time. The
best way to get in touch with us is our 24-hour, 7 days a week helpline. That number is 800-272-3900, and they can ask any question that they'd like, whether it's about the walk or education programs or support services in our area.
Okay. Well, wonderful. Maggie Gibbons, thank you so much for joining us. I hope everyone's learned a lot about Alzheimer's and dementia and the ways that you can help support the Walk to End Alzheimer's. Again, this is Chris Berry on The Chris Berry Show, where you can join us every Sunday at 2 p.m. as we talk legal, financial, and tax planning for the second half of life. And in our next segment, we're going to talk about some legal and financial strategies where if you have a loved one who is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, you can make sure that they have the best quality of life possible as they're going through their journey. So, Maggie, I want to thank you so much for spending time with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you again, Chris.
Yep. All right, so join us in the next segment where we're going to talk about legal, financial, and tax planning strategies, specifically if you're diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's. And if you do have questions, email us at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com. See you after the break.
The cost of long-term care can be overwhelming. If you're dealing with long-term care costs, make plans to attend the next free informative workshop from the Elder Care Firm in Brighton. They'll show you how to protect your hard-earned assets and obtain the governmental benefits you deserve, including veterans benefits and Medicaid.
Hello, I'm attorney Chris Berry. As the only certified elder law attorney in Livingston County, I have the knowledge and estate planning strategies to help you. When you call, reserve your seat at our next workshop or schedule a free 15-minute phone consultation. The Elder Care Firm is here to help you and your family find solutions. Call us today.
Spots are filling up for the next free Elder Care Firm workshop. Reserve your seat today by calling 810-214-3800 or visit theeldercarefirm.com. The Elder Care Firm also invites you to join them for Excite Night at the Pound in downtown Brighton on Tuesday night, August 9th from 5 to 7. This is the kickoff event for this year's Walk to End Alzheimer's, coming up on October 1st. Call 810-214-3800 today.
Welcome back to the Chris Berry Show. This is Chris Berry. So it was great having Maggie, listening to her explain how important Alzheimer's awareness is, the signs to look for, the steps to take, and just what a devastating disease Alzheimer's is. And so again, June 12th, Tuesday, if you're in the Brighton area and you happen to go to Chipotle and you order food from 4 to 8 p.m., and you mention Alzheimer's, then 50% of the bill will go to help support the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So again, June 12th, Brighton, Chipotle, mention Alzheimer's when you're in there between 4 and 8, and they're going to help. Or they're going to donate 50% of the proceeds to the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which, again, is going to be coming up in September. And this being June is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And so next week, next Sunday at 2 p.m., we're going to start talking about some legal and financial steps you can take if you do have a loved one who is affected by Alzheimer's. So join us again next Sunday at 2 p.m. And our topic of the day, we're going to be talking about steps, legal and financial steps if you have a loved one who is affected by Alzheimer's. And since June is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, it certainly makes sense to talk about these topics. Now what we're going to get into is we're going to get into some listener questions. So these are questions that listeners have submitted from the previous week, either online at thechrisberryshow.com, where you can actually go to our website and submit a question online, as well as you can email us at any time at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com. And so with that, I'm going to get into reading some of our questions that have been submitted. And the first question is from Fred. And what Fred asks, can a trust that turns irrevocable due to incapacity be counted against you when applying for Medicaid? So Fred's asking, he continues on, my grandmother's revocable trust turned irrevocable due to her dementia. I need to apply for Medicaid for her, but she has a house worth $200,000 in her trust. Will Medicaid count this asset as an asset, even though her trust turned irrevocable? Well, there's a lot to that question, Fred. So let's unpack it a little bit. So Grandma set up a revocable living trust, and a lot of people have these basic revocable trusts that can avoid probate and control the distribution upon death. And one feature that's built into a lot of these trusts is that if you become incapacitated, meaning you're unable to take care of your own affairs, then what happens is the trust cannot be changed anymore, because we don't want someone who's incapacitated, maybe heavily down the Alzheimer's road. We don't want them making changes to the trust, because they could be preyed on in a financial exploitation situation. So a lot of these, or in most basic revocable living trusts, if someone is incapacitated, and a lot of times it might be two licensed physicians signing off to say that they're incapacitated, or we use a disability panel typically, which would be made up of family members. But if the person's deemed incapacitated, then the trust becomes irrevocable, meaning no more changes can be made. So Fred is wondering that because the trust is now irrevocable, will due to her grandmother's or his grandmother's dementia, what effect does that have on Medicaid? So Medicaid is a governmental program that'll help pay for nursing home costs. But to qualify for Medicaid, a single individual can only have $2,000 worth of countable assets. And countable assets are basically everything other than a home, small cash value of life insurance, personal property, and a prepaid funeral. So it sounds like grandma's house is valued at about $200,000, and it's in this revocable trust. And so Fred's question is, will Medicaid count this as an asset, even though her trust turned irrevocable? And so it becomes tricky because technically, because the house is owned by the trust, it's not in grandma's name, so it is a countable asset. That's something a lot of people don't realize, is that if you have your home in a basic revocable living trust, it is actually a countable asset. It has to be in the Medicaid applicant's name to be exempt. So that's the first issue here, is that it's in her trust. But then Fred continues, what about the fact that the revocable trust became irrevocable due to her incapacity? That actually doesn't have any bearing on this situation because mom is the beneficiary of the trust. Just due to the fact that it's irrevocable, that doesn't shield it for Medicaid purposes. Now, that said, we do use a lot of irrevocable trusts in our practice. Specifically, we use a type of irrevocable trust called a castle trust, where if we can move the asset into the trust and then make it 5 years from the time we move the asset into the trust until we need nursing home or Medicaid, then the home, as well as everything in the trust, including cash or money markets, investments, could be protected from that nursing home or Medicaid spend down. So in this situation, Fred, unfortunately, the house is a countable asset because it's in her trust. But if you were to move it into grandma's name, then it would become an exempt asset. Now, the issue you would have is, what about estate recovery? So what happens when grandma passes away? And to avoid estate recovery, typically we would use a castle trust if we were planning ahead, if we thought we had 5 years before needing nursing home care. Or if we don't think we're going to make it 5 years, then one of the things we do is we use what's called a ladybird deed. A ladybird deed. And it's a type of deed that says it's in grandma's name while she's alive, thereby it's exempt, and then it avoids probate upon her death. As well as avoiding probate, it also avoids an estate recovery, where the state of Michigan since 2011 has been able to place liens on homes to recover whatever they paid out in benefits. But if grandma were to do a ladybird deed, saying that it's in her name while she's alive, and then when she passes away, it avoids estate recovery and probate, that might be the route that I'd suggest going. Now, you might be asking, well, can grandma do that if she's incapacitated? Well, hopefully with that trust and her estate plan, she has a well-drafted financial power of attorney. And that's a document that appoints someone to make financial decisions if you're unable to make your own financial decisions. So by having a well-drafted trust and financial power of attorney, that would allow grandma to move the asset out of the trust into her name. And then from her name, it can be put into a ladybird deed so that if she were to pass away, it avoids estate recovery and avoids probate. And if that's something you want help with, let us know, Fred. We'd be happy to help you. We do ladybird deeds for our clients all the time. And if you want assistance, or if any of the topics that we talk about, if you need help for your own individual situation, feel free to give us a call at any time at 810-355-2584. Or you can shoot us an email at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com, and we'll read some of your questions on air. But probably the best step, if you do want to start planning for your future, or if you have a loved one in crisis, would be to attend one of our upcoming workshops, where we talk about the necessary steps, both legal and financial, to plan for the second half of life. And you can get information on that workshop by visiting us at thechrisberryshow.com. So I hope that's helpful, Fred. Like I said, I think probably a ladybird deed would make the most sense in that situation. But again, I advise you to sit down with a certified elder law attorney. So now we'll move to our next question. should I purchase term life insurance or whole life insurance? And this is from David. And David submitted an email, and he said, my wife and I are in the process of closing on a home purchase, and we want to be insured in case something happens when we start paying on our mortgage. We are both healthy, 28-year-olds with no children. My father-in-law thinks we should purchase a whole life policy because of the cash value accumulation, but I'm leaning towards some term policies for my wife and I. And so the term insurance is a lot cheaper. Is the extra money that we'd be putting away towards the cash value on a permanent policy be better invested in either a Roth 401k, a Roth IRA, a 401k, 529 plans, or just kept as cash flow? Well, David, there's a lot in that question. So just kind of summarizing it, should I purchase term life insurance or whole life insurance? Well, I think the key with this is always ask, what is the purpose of insurance? And what it's a tool. And so the question is, what is the best tool for your situation? And so really, I think we need to understand what the difference between term and permanent or whole life insurance is. With term life insurance, you're basically paying an insurance company, giving them money annually for a period of time. And then if you were to pass away during that period of time, then the insurance company is going to pay you a death benefit. So a lot of people might have a term policy that matches the length of their mortgage, or if you have young children, term policy is a cheap way to ensure that if someone passes away, that there's money for the children. So it's pretty straightforward. You're basically insured over a term, and then at the end of that term, if you are still with us, still alive, that's the good news. The bad news is that you miss out on any type of investment. Basically, the insurance company isn't going to pay the death benefit because you didn't pass away during that period of time. So there's nothing left over. Now, you compare that to a whole life policy or a permanent life insurance. One of the features with this is that you're basically giving the insurance company money yearly, and it's going to start generating or growing in cash value. And what this does or allows, as this cash value grows, it can actually grow tax-free. And so there's some interesting uses of permanent life insurance. Sometimes it can be used as part of college planning. It's similar to a 529 plan. Or it can be used as tax-free retirement income, where you put money into the permanent life insurance, and then in retirement, you can take that money out tax-free. So it almost has like a Roth type feature to it. So those are some interesting uses of whole life policies. But getting to your specific situation, David, so you and your wife, you don't have any children, 28. Really, I would probably only look at the permanent life insurance if you wanted that investment. Some people view it as a forced savings. So it's a way to force that you're stocking money away for retirement. But in your situation, it really could go either way. But the important thing is to understand that the differences between term life insurance and permanent life insurance. And if you are going to go the permanent life insurance route, make sure you understand what you're getting into and why you're going that direction. So I hope that was helpful, Dave. So the next question we have is from Vernon. So question is, who pays taxes, home maintenance costs when mom is in the nursing home and on Medicaid? Vernon writes in, my 82-year-old mother suffers from dementia and is no longer able to live on her own. She'll be moving into a nursing home, but the nursing home is taking all of her income, leaving her $60 a month. So who pays property tax and maintenance once she is in a nursing home on Medicaid? Are my sister and I responsible? So interesting question, kind of fitting with the theme of this month, the Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. So Vernon's mom is in a nursing home. And we talked about already how for a nursing home, if you're on Medicaid, the home is an exempt asset, meaning they're not going to take your home, but they might place a lien on the home when you pass away. So you have to use a lot of times a ladybird deed to avoid that estate recovery. Now, the interesting question is always, okay, if the home is exempt, mom is in the nursing home, she can only keep $60 a month of her income because the rest goes to what's called a patient pay amount. So the interesting question is what about the home expenses, like taxes and maintenance and that type of thing? If you're on Medicaid in a nursing home, that's $60 a month. That's going to maybe a haircut each month. But how do you pay the rest of the bills associated with home ownership? And Vernon, you kind of hit the question, the nail right on the head there. Who's responsible? So in reality, mom is responsible. You're not necessarily legally responsible for the upkeep of the home. That said, if you want to ensure that the home doesn't have a tax lien against it, to make sure it doesn't look like it's some home that's ready to be broken into, then you and your sister are probably going to want to take care of the home, keep things going while mom is in the nursing home. And that's one of the reasons that we try to make sure that when we're planning for the second half of life and long-term care, that we protect your resources as much as we can, so that you have the best choice in care, best choice of quality of life, make sure that your resources last as much as you do. So that's it for the questions for this week. Next week, we're going to get into talking about legal and financial steps we can take to help plan for a loved one who has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, with it being Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And if you do get a chance, join us June 12th at Chipotle in Brighton for dinner, where 50% of the proceeds will go to the Alzheimer's Association, as long as you mention Alzheimer's at the time of your order. And then, again, if you do have questions, you can submit them to us at any time. Ask Chris at thechrisberryshow.com or give us a call at 810-355-2584. And you've been listening to Chris Berry, host of The Chris Berry Show, every Sunday at 2 p.m. on FM 101.5, AM 1400, The Patriot, as well as on iTunes, where every week we talk legal, financial, and tax planning strategies, planning for the second half of life. And I do hope you join us next week as we're continuing the theme of June and Alzheimer's Awareness Month, where we talk about the legal and financial strategies available if you do have a loved one who has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so with that, this has been Chris Berry. I hope you have a wonderful week, and join me next week. Looking forward to talking to you again then. Take care.
Learn more about Chris Berry and the Elder Care Firm by visiting online at MichiganEstatePlanning.com. That's MichiganEstatePlanning.com. You can also call Chris Berry at 888-390-4360. 888-390-4360. This program content reflects the opinions of Chris Berry and his guests, not the Elder Care Firm, Prosperity Capital Advisors, or the C.J. Berry Group, and is subject to change at any time without notice. Content provided herein is for informational purposes only and should not be used or construed as investment or legal advice or a recommendation regarding the purchase or sale of any security or to follow any legal or tax strategy. There's no guarantee that the strategist's statements, opinions, or forecast provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses, which would reduce returns. All investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There's no guarantee that any investment plan or strategy will be successful. We recommend that you consult with a professional dedicated to your needs. This program is furnished by the Elder Care Firm.
If you or a loved one is facing long-term care costs, make sure you talk with certified elder law attorney Chris Berry from the Elder Care Firm, like Sherry Skelton and her family did from Fenton.
It's really scary when you know that your parent deserves a certain quality of life and you're not able to afford it unless you get these benefits. And that was the place where we were at. We were like, we couldn't take care of her. We all had families of our own. We all worked. And of course, we wanted her in the best possible place that we could afford. And none of that would have been, we never would have been able to do that if it wasn't for them. I always recommend Chris. And I always tell people when they have any questions, I just say, you know what, you need to contact this guy because I can't even begin to tell you what he did for my family.
Hello, I'm attorney Chris Berry. The Elder Care Firm is here to help you and your family find solutions. Call us today.
Protect your assets from probate, long-term care costs, the IRS, and get the governmental benefits you deserve. Visit theeldercarefirm.com today or call 810-214-3800.